You're about to hear an original HFY sci-fi tale titled The Survival Drill That Proved Deathworlders Don't Understand Danger Sci-Fi Space Opera. Find a quiet spot, put on your headphones, and let the stars fall silent. If you enjoy cinematic sci-fi narrations, consider subscribing for more. Now, we begin. It begins in the white noise of a storm that was never supposed to be born. Clouds churn like dark oceans over the training valley of Lambda 4 Prime, a terraforming site deemed safe enough for simulations by the Galactic Union's brightest risk calculators. Someone fed 100 parameters into a weather engine, dialed stressors to moderate, and assured a dozen species that the scenario would challenge but not harm them. Numbers hummed. Red lines blinked green. The valley, ringed by newborn basalt cliffs and grass like spun silver wire, lay waiting for a tidy lesson in interspecies cooperation. No one wrote a line item for the human habit of treating danger like a riddle that wants to be solved. The first drop pod hisses through the gloom. Inside, a Terran platoon sits strapped into crash couches that have seen real wars. They are not here for a war, that's what the Union said. 72 hours, controlled variables, no live hostiles, no lethal thresholds. A drill. A handshake, not a struggle. The pod rocks, stabilizers fire, the hull sings with the heat of descent. A dozen helmets hang from bulkhead hooks and only 5 are worn. The rest are tucked under arms, clipped to belts, or resting on laps like faithful dogs awaiting the command to guard. Commander Ryan Hale keeps his helmet off for now. He listens. Stormbelly thunder whispers through the hull. Beneath it, the low susurrus of his people, small things, a joke about canned coffee, a rustle of ration wrappers, the soft scrape of a boot heel on deck. He feels their heartbeat through the floor. 12 bodies, 1 pulse. Across orbit, the Union drops their teams. Theran crystalline engineers with eyes like prisms. Gelathian aquatics who carry hydration packs the way deep-sea divers carry oxygen, gilled throats fluttering when air runs too dry. Vokrian avian bipeds with brilliant mantles of feathers that lie flat when they are afraid and bristle when they boast. A couple of gentle Alu medics, soft-bodied beings whose translucent flesh glows when they concentrate. And Usar Logistics Quartet, all truncarm coordination and ledger-brain confidence. The facilitator is a Riley's named Prell, blue-skinned, four-armed, nerves braided like harp strings beneath her translucent dermis. She keeps repeating the phrase, controlled learning, into her wrist unit, as if naming the thing will keep it obedient. The pods thud into the valley like raindrops. Hatch's iris open. The air outside smells of iron rain and damp clay. It is new air, infant air, a recipe still in the bowl. Under it, the ground ticks with the hollow sound of a planet cooling from its latest rage. The humans step into it like hikers onto a trail. Hale squints at the sky, reads the belly of the clouds the way his great-grandfather read cornrows under a tornado warning. The temperature slide is wrong. The wind speaks from 2 directions at once. Storm math gets tugged into knots where mountains are still learning their own names. Helmets up, he says. We're digging first. Digging what? Asks Sergeant Amani, already slinging her pack toward the largest patch of earth that looks like it will flood if you glare at it. She's grinning. Her grin shows when work is about to begin. Somewhere to fail small before the planet encourages us to fail big, Hale says. She nods like he told her the sun's about to rise. Trenches, windbreaks, a burn pit. Easy enough. 2 words ripple through the platoon, and even those who aren't smiling have their eyes narrowed into that crinkle of bright focus that says, we get to make something with our hands that will decide if we breathe or not. Musa drops the trench shovels. Magdalen checks foil blankets. Kumar stakes a tarp. Sato flicks out a laser line and marks soil like a tailor chalking cloth. They move like they're building a memory. Across the valley, the Union teams do what training taught them. The Therin weave light domes that bend heat and wind into graceful arcs. The Vakrians unfold carbon shelters that catch sunlight even in gloom and route it into warm floors. The Gelathians hum their condensers alive and watch delicate tubes bead water like pearls. The Uzar lay out spreadsheets on their pads and nod because the spreadsheets agree. We are prepared. Prel the facilitator watches the humans dig holes. She is not prepared for holes. She approaches Hale with careful steps designed to say, I am comfortable and in charge and definitely not worried we invited apex omnivores to a picnic. Her translator cuff pings politely. Commander Hale, I hope you will remind your people that this is an exercise, and your methods should align with Union safety doctrine. Trenches are not in the curriculum. Hale looks at her with eyes that have seen curriculums burn. Everything's in the curriculum, he says. The planet writes the curriculum. We just try to show up prepared to take notes. Prel blinks twice in the Riley's language for noted but unsettling. She turns away, muttering to her wrist that the Terran contingent demonstrates high confidence bordering on cavalier. The wind shifts. The first raindrop hits Hale's cheek like a small thrown stone. He puts his helmet on. By hour 2, the storm has decided to be somebody. Temperatures drop 7 degrees in 8 minutes. The infant atmosphere slides off the basalt flank and discovers glee in slicing. The Therin domes refract cold air into knife fans. The Vakrian shelters shudder. The Gelathian condensers frost over with a spiderweb of crystal so beautiful it should be a museum exhibit. Except beauty isn't a blanket. Uzar calculators recalibrate and return a warning no one reads because the wind swallows the chime. The humans' trenches hug the earth. The lip rolls the wind. The tarp bends but holds. Inside it, 12 humans kneel or squat or sit cross-legged. Their breath ghosts into the space between their faces and visor glass. They are warm in the way a hand is warm when it makes a pocket. Sergeant Imani checks the pit where a thumb-sized flame licks at the guts of a ration stove, and she makes a sound in her throat that means satisfaction the way a cat purrs means yes. The first knock at the trench comes from a Gelathian with eyes like blown glass in a furnace. He is shivering the way fish shiver when their tank is knocked. Behind him stumble 2 more, their hydration packs rattling with ice-choked lines. The human who is closest, Musa, reaches out and pulls them. He doesn't wait to be sure their suits will interface. He learns their connector by touch, the way a mechanic learns a bolt by its resistance. He purges the ice, reroutes flow, and taps their chest plates in a rhythm he means as breathe slower, share our rhythm. Plenty of room, he says, scooting his boots to make a Gelathian-shaped space. Behind the Gelathians, a Therin line flares with hairline fractures. Their bodies sing when they're cold, a high harmonic like glass about to split. 2 crystalline engineers are using their own arms as struts for a dome that isn't sure it wants to be a dome anymore. They are shattering by the moment. Imani sees it and slides her foil blanket across the trench, pops her head into the storm and says into a gale, in, if you fall apart where we can catch the pieces. Pieces clatter into the trench. The humans pile them against warm bodies, tuck them into the lee of the flame and don't stop talking. Minimal, powerful words. You're okay. Hold my arm, push your heel there, breath together. By hour 5, the trench holds refugees from 4 species. The humans pass water and heat pouches and share a joke about how Deathworld coffee tastes like the storm's breath if you hold the mug close enough. No one else laughs. They don't have the muscle memory yet, but they learn to breathe in time with a species that treats oxygen like a promise rather than a luxury. In orbit, Prel watches the telemetry with hands pressed to her mouth. The simulation stressors were bound under limits. The storm has found a loophole in the grant paperwork that authorized the training. Her comms chirp with senior observers asking about liability. A Therin minister of engineering whispers, "Turn it off." Prel knows there is no it. Lambda 4 Prime is a real place. Simulation toggles apply to drones and drones alone. The planet shrugged off the leash. Now it is dog and field both. By hour 10, the storm stops pretending to be an instructor. It shows its teeth. A sudden microburst slams the valley with a hand the size of a god's memory. The Valkyrian shelters skitter like beetles, flipping, spilling their careful solar panels like playing cards into the grass. The crunch pop sings in a register humans call uh-oh. Hale feels the trench breathe as the tarp strains. He could seal it airtight. He doesn't. He glances at the Galathian leader, Ows, a name that drops like a bead of water into a pool, and says in a steady voice, "We're going to ride this. Stay low." The microburst throws grit like buckshot. The tarp wails. The humans brace. They have braced against things worse than wind. They've braced against news that kills from across oceans. They've braced against hunger. The habit of bracing is bred in their bones. The tarp holds. When it finally goes dark and the wind lopes off to look for someone else to muscle, the trench unfolds into a breathing thing that made itself a lung without needing to be asked. Hale pokes his head out. The valley is a new map. He notes where the river swelled, where it wants to eat into the far bank, where a line of basalt looked unshakable and shook anyway. He nods to himself and begins to carve a new list in his mind titled, "Things to Teach the Planet About Us." They sleep in shifts. Dreams come like small animals and curl at the feet of those who will let them. Morning comes in blue. The storm leaves a bouquet of lightning in the clouds and 1,000 rills in the soil, each one a water map drawn by a child who loves squiggles. The air tastes raw, wet metal turning toward green. The Galathians stir in gratitude, their gills fluttering like fans in a wedding hall. The Therin hum in a chord that means repair. The Valkyrians arrive with feathers pressed flat, carrying armloads of their torn solar cloth like funeral shrouds. We lost most of our energy mats, their captain says to Hale. His crest is ash-gray at the edges now. The simulation, it seems less simulated today. Hale gestures at the trench. Everything simulated is only someone's best guess, and the planet gets the final vote. You need heat. We need to learn what you know that didn't appear in any of our models. Hale doesn't smile. He has a soft spot for anyone willing to ask for another's version of the truth. You've got claws, he says, looking at the Valkyrian foot talons, perfect sickles for holding branches on a world with trees. We're going to cut firebreaks today. You're going to help us, and we're going to help you build stoves you can kick apart if they try to bite. Owls the Galathian wobbles on his fins, curious. Firebreaks. The valley is moist. There is no risk of lightning answers like a rude god. It chooses a hilltop tuft of grass, kisses it with white, and the tuft sighs into flame. It should stop there. It does not. Lambda's wind finds the flame and feeds it the way grief feeds more grief. Within 6 breaths, the hill wears a diadem of orange. Move, Hale says. He does not say don't panic. He trusts them to see him not panicking and follow the shape of it as if panic had a shadow they could step on to pin it in place. The humans run toward the fire. The aliens stare for a heartbeat too long, trying to rearrange the language of away from into toward. Then they forge after the Terrans, legs pumping, fins flapping, crystalline knees singing, feathered feet slashing the grass. Line here, Imani shouts, stabbing her shovel into sod. Cut it to dirt, deep as your hand. No deeper, raw earth, turn it over so the wet side shows. Kumar slams a cutter into the root mat and peels a chunk that comes free with a noise that sounds like a world offering its skin for a bandage. Sado lays foil blankets along the line to reflect heat away. Musa moves like a metronome. Slash, pry, fling, stomp. The Valkyrians discover their talons are perfect for ripping turf. The Galathians drag water tanks on sleds, gurgling in laughter as spray hits feather and foil alike. The Therin hum, bodies vibrating in a way that centimeters the Fireline's dirt into a tighter seal. The blaze arrives like a parade. The first tongues of it lick the foil and flinch back, confused. It tries another angle, meets raw dirt, and finds nothing it recognizes as fuel. The wind eddies in frustration. It wanted to make something big and beautiful destroy something smaller for practice. The humans have written no across the ground in a language fire must respect. The line holds. They don't cheer. They collapse on their heels, chest sawing, hands shaking. Then they look at the fire beyond the break, the part that will sear itself out without crossing to this side, and their eyes soften at the ferocity, as if respecting an opponent you refuse to let eat you tonight is another necessary habit. Why? The Valkyrian captain asks Hale, voice raw. You could have held your line, saved your fuel, and let ours burn. It's a drill. Practice doesn't care how we justify who we leave behind, Hale says. The habit would remain. We don't practice leaving people. The captain looks at him like he's seeing the shape of a mountain under fog, realizing he's been walking in a valley this whole time. They spend the rest of the day building the things people don't know they'll need until it's almost too late to build them. A simple stove pit that won't topple when someone stumbles. A windbreak that learns which way to lean. A water catch that can be kicked toward a Gelathian's mouth one-handed. The Therin learn to weave their light into blankets that hold heat the way a memory holds your mother's voice when you need it. The Elumetics put their soft hands on human blisters and hum a tune that reduces swelling. The Uzar rework their spreadsheets into checklists and tape them to their wrists where they can become muscle memory if repeated enough. Prel watches from orbit and breathes for the first time in hours without counting each breath like money. Night remembers how to be gentle. It doesn't remember for long. At hour 34, Lambda's crust makes a new decision. The planet is a teenager and has discovered the joy of growth spurts. Tectonic plates shrug. The basalt ring around the valley moans like a cello played by a careless god. The ground lifts a centimeter, then 8, then drops, then tears. Fissures thread the valley floor like spiders given too much caffeine. The first steam plume fans into the sky with a noise that makes humans think of tea kettles and aliens think of trapped whales. A second plume roars. The air smells of brimstone and birth. Prel's wrist unit erupts into warning choruses. Unscheduled tectonic anomaly, the AI says in a voice that was designed to calm but is now doing the opposite. Evacuate to pods, evacuate to pods. Hale is already pointing. Weak backs carry gear, strong backs carry people. Nobody runs alone. Tie in lines. We move to the western bank, bedrock there, less likely to spit on us. A slab collapses under a Gelathian trio. Owls goes down in a clatter of gear and is pinned when a girder from a Valkyrian shelter, flung by an earlier wind, drops with stupid precision across his fins and tail. He makes the sound of a fish caught in a net. The fissure he's trapped over glows orange. It will open into a mouth any second, and he will be a song about a friend we lost. The Gelathians around him freeze in a way prey does. Hale does not freeze. He runs at a dead machine until it agrees to be a tool again. Imani is at his shoulder. Musa too. The girder is hot. They lift anyway. The heat sprays up their sleeves, kisses the tender places at the elbow where sweat pools. Kumar slides his boot under the girder as fulcrum. Sato shoves a shovel where it will bite and lever. The girder moves. It moves because it was always going to move if enough of them told it the same story about how it would end. A fissure pops its shoulder wider. Flame breathes closer. Something in Corporal Vance's suit squeals and melts when he hooks both arms under Ow's and Hall's. The heat blossoms across his chest plate like a black flower refusing to stay a rumor. He does not scream. He grunts. He staggers backward with Ow's, and then with one last animal heave, he throws an alien he met yesterday toward hands that found the reflex to catch. Vance sits down hard in the dust. Didn't know this was optional, he says to no one and everyone, and then he folds like a tent coming down. Elu hands touch him on the move, lifting, sealing, cooling. The medics hum until their skin glows white, then dim to green. Vance's visor fogs as his breath comes back in. Hale puts his forehead to the visor and says nothing because what would he say? I saw you. I will remember you. Your pain translates in any language. The valley cracks louder. The evacuation stutters, then flows. They learn the dance that lets a dozen species move in one rhythm across ground that cannot decide what shape it wants to be. Human hands become the place where everyone's fear can sit and breathe for 2 seconds between decision points. When the hillside slumps like a drunk and tries to roll them downhill, the Valkyrians spread their mantles and catch wind, making themselves sails that hold a line taut for an extra heartbeat so a Theron can step where they would have fallen. When a Gelathian slides, Muser wraps a tie line around his waist and lets his boots be an anchor so a fish person can be hauled back upstream through a river of ash. When an Uzar faints, an Elu hum carries them through the worst of it, voice a hand cupped around a candle flame. They make it to the western bank as a sheet of basalt sloughs off the eastern slope and slams the valley floor with a noise that will live in everyone's spine forever. A column of ash goes up. The heavens decide noon will be night for 10 minutes. The ash falls on helmets like gray rain. The pods, recalled by AI, sizzle as ash lands hot and tries to call it names. Prell hears herself whisper, please, which is not in any facilitator manual she has read. Hale counts heads. He has the number in his bones. It isn't math. It's an ache that pings if it's unbalanced. We're missing one, he says, and the word one makes 30 people look for something the size of a person with a particular gait, not because they could describe that gait, but because a group that survived the past day in a trench now believes it knows one another's footsteps. They find the missing Theron at the edge of an old lava tube. Their crystalline knee joint is wedged in a crack that refuses to heed reason. Theron math might coo to it. The crack is illiterate. Hale slides down the tube face first on his belly, feels rock teeth chew his suit, and grins without humor. Hold your hum, he tells the Theron. On my count, drop it 3 notes. The Theron blinks. Why would, trust me, they do. On 3, they slide their hum down as if stooping to pick up a memory. The crystalline knee vibrates against a frequency that makes it slippery. Hale jerks. The knee pops free. They crawl up the tube together like 2 puppies trying to occupy the same narrow hallway. The Theron's face flashes a chord that means joy, pain, astonishment. Hale pats their shoulder and coughs out powerfully understated words. Almost lost you, didn't. The pods open their mouths like whales feeding and people pour in. Humans wait until everyone else is sealed. Hale is last by habit and because he has a superstition. The commander should be last to board anything that could leave. It is a superstition humans would call old-fashioned and not bring up, because to name it out loud would make it fragile. Orbit accepts them in bright, clean arms. Air that doesn't try to teach them lessons pours over skin. Prell stands outside the medical bay door as if the soles of her feet are explaining something to the deck that her tongue cannot yet shape for the air. Hale steps into stark white light trailing ash like a comet. Vance is already on a floating bed, suit peeled to his waist, chest wrapped in bandage foam that thinks it's clever. The Elu have their glow turned to a resting sunrise. You broke the exercise, Prell says softly, as if it's a punchline and a prayer. The planet broke it, Hale says. We fixed what we could. You went toward fire. You lifted metal that burned through your gloves. You smiled during a storm. You refused to leave until the count matched the plan. This was supposed to teach cooperation. It has taught implications. Hale wipes grime from his eyes with a knuckle that thinks it wants to complain. He looks past Prell at the window where Lambda 4 Prime turns in its first real dignity. Your problem, he says, not unkindly, is thinking cooperation and courage are different classes. We were raised to believe they are the same homework written in different hands. Prell's 4 fingers, long and jointed like elegant branches, clench and open. The council will want to debrief. They can have words when the burned are asleep. The council waits. It is the first sign of wisdom Hale has seen today that does not have dirt under its nails. In the mess, the species who shared a trench catch each other's eyes and nod in the way that says, "When the ground moves again, I will know which way you sway and I will sway with you until the music changes." Vance wakes to a ceiling he does not recognize and a pain that he names gently so it will answer when he calls. "You are mine. You will not be too big to hold." Imani sits by his bed, boots off, socked feet propped on a chair, arms crossed, chin down. When his eyes open, she opens one of hers and says, "Next time let me be the stupid one first. We can take turns." He croaks a laugh. "Didn't realize there would be a sign-up sheet." "There isn't," she says. "We're human, we'll fight for the slot." A Gelathian shadow falls across him. Owls, fins bandaged, hydration pack slung across shoulders like a musician slinging a guitar, clears his throat in the way of his people, a bubbling from the gills upward. "Your burns," he says. "They ache. They sing," Vance says. "We will bring cold and listen with you," Ows says, and he stands for the next hour beside a man who pulled him out of a fissure and hums in a frequency that makes hurt loosen its fists. In the debrief hall, the council sits behind glass as if the humans might leap the space and do something unpredictable. They are not wrong to imagine this. Unpredictability is a habit of survivors when systems snap, and the manual says nothing about lava. The Theron counselor fractures a little when she speaks. The stress lines of duty show even in crystal. You did not behave as models predicted. Hale's hands are clean now. He left the dirt on the planet where it belongs. He scrubs a thumb across his forefinger as if checking for grit that isn't there. "Your models were probably good at math," he says, "but they didn't know us. Models don't know the way a thing feels when it's too close to tearing." "You did not fear danger," and Uzar says, trunk swaying. Their voice is dry paper. "We did," Hale says, "we just don't let it captain the boat." In the firebreak, the Vokrian captain interjects from the side gallery, invited by someone who wanted to hear witnesses. They ran toward it. They assumed it could be stopped. That assumption kept me alive. That assumption is not in our doctrine. "It could have gone wrong," Prell says. "It is not accusation. It is awe that has found a seat in doubt and is trying both chairs on for size." "It usually does," Hale says. "We practice so that when it does, fewer funerals need to be held." The Theron leans forward. Light plays in her facets like storm sheets. "Commander Hale, we need your species to instruct ours, not in the calculus of weather. In this frame, this choice to go toward, this insistence on counting." Hale looks at the faces in the gallery. The trench contingent sits not with their species, but with one another in a weird braid of shapes that slides from Gelathian to human, to Vokrian, to Theron like a river trying to learn how to sing chords. He thinks of a Midwest basement where his grandmother made him sit under a table during a tornado, listening to her tell stories, while the world moved furniture on the roof. He thinks of a night in a shuttle over a different world where he learned how to say goodbye to a friend in a language quiet enough that no one else would have to hear it. He thinks of holes dug in clay with hands that didn't know they were learning how to cradle infinity. "We'll teach," he says, "but it won't be a classroom. It never is. It will be holes in the ground and lines drawn in dirt and the long work of learning which way the wind lies between numbers. And you'll teach us, too, how to hum a knee free from a crack, how to carry water in a way that makes it remember it was once the sea." The council does something new then. They stand. Prell lowers her head. The lights of the hall dim for a moment as if Lambda 4 Prime's orbit wanted to rehearse sunrise. The rest of the station learns in hours what Lambda taught in days. Humans are not heroes in the way epics mean when they roll drums and list names. Humans are stubborn. Humans are precise. Humans are reckless on purpose sometimes. But the recklessness is usually a ladder they built ahead of time with spare parts, and a crazy understanding of balance. Humans make a habit of making habits, especially the kind that keep your heart from wandering away while you're not looking. Word travels across Union space the way gossip does when it's not gossip but a survival manual with fingerprints all over it. On Kesh Station, when a reactor chill loop coughs and decides to retire mid-shift, the Galathian tech on duty doesn't swim away from the rising steam. They slap a hand on the emergency siren, feel the air shake with the beginning of a bad story, and run toward the heat, shouting for someone to pull a line and someone else to grab a shovel. The shovel is a joke at first. This is a space station. There is no dirt. But the line is not a joke. The line saves 2 Vokrians who slip on condensation from a late spray. The Galathian is later asked why they ran toward the red lights. Because I was in a trench with a human who told a storm to mind its manners, they say, as if it answers anything more complicated than it does. On Rise 6, a Theran crew building a bridge sings a new chord while they work. It is low and warm. It sets the resonance of their load bearing to a frequency that disagrees with a tremor that wanders through at lunch. The tremor leaves embarrassed. The chord swells into a tradition. They call it the Hail Note in private, because naming things after the living embarrasses humans, and they do not want to do that to a species that runs toward. On Earth, Hail goes home. Home is red dirt under black boots, and a sky he knows better than the back of his hand because he doesn't look at the back of his hand much. He looks at the sky more often. He plants trees like they're arguments he intends to win in 100 years with the kind of patience men in uniforms aren't supposed to own. His daughter asks him why he digs holes if he's tired of digging, and he says, "Because somebody has to go first, and dirt isn't as heavy as other things." He sits on the porch at dusk and watches a storm knit itself on the horizon. It is small. It is practice for the sky. He smiles because practice is church. A message chimes on his pad. It is from Prel, now heading a new directorate with a name that makes Hale laugh until he coughs. Directorate of Applied Courage. Bureaucracy can learn. It learns in fits and starts, but then so did Lambda. Prel's message is short. "We are building trenches in places that have never met wind," she writes. They are made of habit. The Fireline cohort asks if you will visit. No speeches. We just want to put our hands in dirt together. Hale types something back about fishing with his daughter this weekend, and how he's learned to say yes even when he's tired. He says he will come and dig until his hands remember they belong to a species that understands the difference between danger and decision. He does not know yet that the next drill will be real from the first minute. No one does. He has allowed his porch and his small quiet for one more sunset. The crisis on Arda 12 arrives like a rumor that was true all along. A mining moon, heavily automated, developing a sweet habit of ignoring maintenance warnings until they accumulate into a chorus. A supply convoy drops out of FTL and finds debris drifting in the shape of a question mark. The signal that crawls out of that mess shakes like a child's voice trying to be a radio. The Union pings every team with any business anywhere near. The Fireline cohort is on a training circuit close enough to burn fuel and arrive with a tank still whispering about risk. Hale is invited as a civilian observer, which makes him snort because none of the words fit how he wears time. Arda 12 teaches humility by smashing it into the face. The mind's venting has gone wrong in a way that makes diagrams blush and hide behind manuals. Pressure picks one path, then 3, then none. A swarm of service drones tries to seal and makes everything worse because sealant foam and vacuum are a stupid couple and should never be left alone together. A handful of sapients, maintenance crew, a cook who refused to leave her pots, a pair of visiting Theran structural grad students are clustered in a chamber that was supposed to be sealed and is not. The Fireline arrives with a hole already drawn in their heads for where fear will sit. They do not scramble, they allocate. They draw lines on planning boards that are already smeared with old coffee. They count. They count again. Hale watches as a Vokrian captain, now known for a windbreak trick, gives orders to a Gelathian who once almost boiled and a Theran who once nearly cracked. His throat tightens. Pride is a small word for a big heat. Vent west face, the captain says. Break pressure in threes. Humans, sorry, Terrans, your lungs lie. You overestimate. Where the extra bottles? Hale puts the extra bottle on and says nothing because he taught them once. Now they are teaching him the etiquette of surviving in someone else's home. They cut into a corridor jammed with foam. It looks like a downed cloud. It tastes like an industrial accident. Hale leads 3. Imani takes 3 more. The Alu hum in the rear, hands ready to put fire out where skin remembers it too intensely. The corridor goes neon white at the end, and heat makes itself into a blanket no one asked for. They crawl through, elbows and knees carving tracks, and emerge into a chamber that has decided to be a volcano with no ash. The cook stands in the middle, ladle in hand, and glares at them like they are late to dinner. "Let's get you out," Hale says. "I will not abandon my station," the cook says. "You will let us relocate your station," Hale says, and something in his voice is that combination of firmness and humor people use when asking their children to give them the scissors first, please. The cook huffs and allows herself to be guided by a rope around her waist. The Theran grad students vibrate at a pitch that says we chose a path that will tell our parents they should have believed in us early. They bob down the line like kites. They reach cool air and gulp gratitude in the form of oxygen. R-12 skin ripples and buckles. The mind moans. Someone's calculation somewhere gives up in embarrassment. The Fireline's line holds because it is woven of people who once carved a no across the ground between flame and the rest of their lives. They lose no one. They would have, if not for 3 minutes here and a shove there, and a stubborn human whose foot kept a door from thinking too soon about closing. They bring the cook out last because she insists, and because Hale has learned the unit conversion between respect and compliance in several cultures. And sometimes you bargain with dignity because time will not bargain with you. R-12 doesn't stop trying to die. It tries again 2 days after everyone leaves. The Union closes it for a long time and sends machines with better manners. Stories multiply. They do not get taller in the telling. They get truer. On Gelathia, a child asks their elder what danger means. The elder says, "It is the feeling before a decision." On Vokria, a feathered poet writes a line that translates to, "Some of us were born on wind. The humans taught us how to lean into it." On Theran, an engineer loops the Hale note into a survey algorithm and laughs when the error margins narrow as if fear itself decided to help. Prell's Directorate of Applied Courage becomes a building in orbit around a planet that has forgiven itself for breaking a training day. The lobby is painfully bureaucratic. Someone had to order plants, and they did, and now the plants grow under the light of a star that almost killed their friends once. On the wall hangs a simple plaque, a drawing of a trench line and the words "practice for the sky." Below it in smaller script, "Count, go toward, hold the line, then teach someone else." Hale avoids the plaque when he visits. He walks past it like he doesn't know poems were written. He sits in rooms with Prell and argues about how to mandate something that must be chosen. He sits with young recruits from 40 species, and shows them how to look at a cloud and see teeth. He puts a shovel in hands not made for shovels and says, "Let your body argue with the ground until the ground gives you a shape you can use." He listens when an Usar tells him the words their grandmother said when rivers ran the wrong direction on their ancestral plane. He writes those words down on the inside of his skull. He is older every time he goes back to Earth. Trees he planted shade his daughter while she reads. He sits on the porch and thinks about the gap between simulation and experience, a gap that is only bridged by sweat. The news feed sometimes calls him a hero. He turns the feed off and goes to fix the fence because a storm took a piece of it last night, and he knows to fix fences while the ground is soft. His platoon is different now. Vance has a scar he doesn't show unless asked in a tone that knows what it's asking for. Imani laughs more. Kumar teaches a class where the final exam is digging a latrine in the right place at the right time in the right way, and the students leave blissfully unaware that they just learned geometry of care. Sato calibrates his cutter to hum at a tune that frees stuck bolts without stripping them, because he learned that song freeing a knee trapped in a tube. The galaxy adjusts its chair. It scoots closer to a table where humans shuck gear and spread maps. Aliens bring their own maps. They lay them on top. They learn to see rivers under roads. They learn to see habits under habits. On the anniversary of Lambda 4 exercise that wasn't, Prel asks Hale to return to the valley. The planet has settled a little, like an older dog lying down. The basalt has grown moss that pretends it wasn't born yesterday. The trench is not there. The wind took it and made it into other shapes. That is fine. Trenches are not meant to be statues. They stand at the edge of where the firebreak once met the grass. Prel holds a small container. She opens it. Inside is dirt from 40 worlds, a pinch from each. We thought we would build a monument, she says. We realized we should plant something instead. They plant a tree. It isn't a human tree or a Riley's plant or a Theron crystal vine that eats light. It's a lambda tree, a nervous thing that wants to survive and is trying out the habit. They tamp the soil with boots and fins and crystal toes. The Elu hum, and maybe the roots like the sound. Hale puts his palm on the sapling and whispers, "Grow like you're running towards something worth your branches." A storm forms in the distance. It looks like a dress rehearsal. Hale steps back into the posture of a man who will wait to see if the wind is a liar today. Prel watches his profile and thinks not for the first time that humans are not frightening because they like danger. They are frightening because they understand that danger is not a personality. It is only weather, and they are very, very good at weather. The wind breaks to the north. The storm wanders away to spook some cliffs. The sapling yawns as if learning to breathe taller. Prel clears her throat. They still don't understand you in council, she says. They are afraid they never will. They don't need to, Hale says. Understanding is the wrong goal. Learning is right. We don't need to be known like a theorem. We need to be counted on like a habit. Do you ever tire of being asked for more? Hale smiles the tired smile of a man whose back knows the shovel by first name. Every day, then someone calls from a hole they fell into, and the body remembers not to count the cost until the counting is done. Prel exhales. It is a soft, many-armed sound. There's a storm season coming for the Union, she says. Politics, resources, old grudges, new misreadings. I am not asking you to hold a line you didn't draw. You don't have to ask, Hale says. We're already sharpening the shovels. They walk the valley. They tell stories about Lambda's bad day. None of the stories are about heroics. They are about moments when hands were steady, about how fear sat in a certain corner of someone's mouth and how that was okay, about how nobody pretended the planet was kind, about how kindness is a thing you bring with you and leave behind when you go so the next person who comes by will have something to find. As twilight wraps the basalt in a shawl, they stand at the lip of a new trench a class dug this morning. It is not deep. It is perfect for its size. It will not last beyond the next rain. That is fine. The important things are portable. Hale looks at Prel, then at the valley, then at a sky that has finally learned how to be dramatic without being destructive. His voice is quiet, shaped for a microphone in a helmet or for a child leaning on his knee. We didn't pass your test, he says. We stayed alive long enough to write a better one. Will you publish it? Prel asks, teasing, because she is learning the human habit of making a joke where tears might otherwise be. He shakes his head. We'll show it. then hands someone else the shovel. When he leaves Lambda for this time, he does not look back. The planet will take care of itself in the way teenagers do when they finally meet the right teacher. He boards his shuttle. Imani falls asleep buckled in, head tilted toward a window where stars move like they're late for dinner. Vance checks a scar that is no longer angry but might always be opinionated. Kumar hums a tune that once freed a knee. They ascend. The valley spins out beneath them until it is a green thought in a blue mind. Earth waits in another door down the hall of the sky. The Union waits in rooms where new policies will be written in ink that remembers smoke. Somebody somewhere is digging a hole because a human told them a story that made their hands itch. Somebody somewhere else is running toward a noise because they learned how to count before they moved. Hale closes his eyes. In the half-sleep on the way to orbit, he dreams of 100 trenches on 100 worlds, each one a small refusal to die the easy way. He wakes with the taste of rain on his tongue and the certainty of one sentence that feels true from the bone out. When the shuttle door opens to the bright sterile smell of a station's morning, he speaks it to no one and everyone in earshot, the way you say grace before a meal even if you're alone. The words are simple, clear, a kind of prayer humans specialize in. And that day the galaxy learned humanity doesn't conquer, it endures. Headphone, if you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more epic HFY sci-fi tales. Until next time, stay human, stay unbroken.